It was meant to be the most joyous day of my life. The day I tied the knot with Sarah, the love of my life. After months of preparation, everything was coming together just as we had planned. Our venue of choice was a gorgeous house on the outskirts of town, encircled by tall trees and verdant gardens. It appeared to be the ideal location for our big day. I was so excited as the day got closer that I couldn't hold it. I pictured myself heading down the aisle and finding Sarah at the altar, her dazzling smile illuminating the space. I had no idea, though, that our idyllic wedding would soon become a nightmare. I was nervous when I woke up the morning of the wedding. I felt like there was something heavy resting on my chest, but I couldn't exactly identify it. I dismissed it as pre-wedding anxiety and concentrated on preparing for the special day. I was astounded by the venue's opulence when Sarah and I arrived. With the expanse of grounds serving as a backdrop, the home appeared towering and commanding. Excitement was in the air as guests began to arrive with their happy conversation. But as soon as the ceremony got underway, odd things started to happen. I swear I caught a glimpse of a shadowy figure skulking out of the corner of my eye during our vows. I happened to peek at Sarah and noticed that her expression was aloof, almost haunting. A strong blast of wind blew through the venue as we were exchanging rings, putting out the candles and leaving us in the dark. As we stumbled through the complete darkness, panic shot through the crowd. The electricity eventually returned, but the unsettling feeling persisted. Guests whispered about odd noises they heard coming from the old mansion throughout the reception. Some reported seeing spectral figures move along the corridors. Even with the eerie environment, Sarah and I made an effort to cherish our wonderful day. However, as the evening went on, it became evident that the venue had a significant problem. It appeared as though a hostile entity was attempting to ruin our wedding. We decided to leave the reception early in an attempt to salvage what little was left of our celebration. However, a spine-tingling scream halted us in our tracks as we were heading for the exit. Tracking the sound, we arrived at the top of the grand staircase to discover one of our guests lifeless. We raced to their side just as panic broke out again, but it was too late. They had already left. An inquiry into the unexplained death was started when the authorities were contacted. Nevertheless, despite their best efforts, they were unable to explain what had occurred. The estate appeared to be cursed, with the potential to bring misfortune to anyone who ventured within. Sarah and I made an effort to forget the horrors of our wedding day in the days that followed. But the memory of that terrible night followed us about like a ghost in the night, no matter how hard we tried to forget it. I still have the unshakable impression that there is evil behind the walls of that haunted wedding location. And when I reflect on what ought to have been my best day ever, I can't help but question whether our relationship was doomed from the beginning. Everything began when Emily, my fiancée, and I made the decision to get married. We were so excited that we could not wait to organize the ideal wedding. However, we both had busy professions, so we were aware that we would need assistance to make our ideal wedding a reality. That's how we came across Samantha, a highly regarded wedding planner with a track record of making fantasies come true. I sensed something was up with Samantha from the first minute we met. Her eyes had a calculating look and a coldness about them that made me shudder. However, Emily dismissed my worries, stating that Samantha was only devoted to her work. Samantha assumed charge of every facet of our wedding preparation as the months passed. She paid close attention to every detail, but I couldn't get rid of the nagging feeling at the back of my mind. She seemed to always be one step ahead of us, figuring out our next move before we did. Odd things began to happen as the big day approached. After going missing, our invites were found torn up in the mailbox. Samantha had assured us the flowers would be fresh and colorful, but when they arrived, they were withered and dead. I also saw Samantha skulking in the shadows on few occasions, and each time I did, it gave me shivers. However, the day of the rehearsal dinner was the last straw. Samantha took me aside, a menacing smirk on her face, as Emily and I were putting the finishing touches on the location. She muttered, "I have a surprise for you," with a tone full of hate. She showed me to a private room at the back of the arena before I could respond. I discovered a scene out of a nightmare within. There were creepy shadows all throughout the room as candles flickered menacingly on the walls. A life-size mannequin with glassy eyes staring blankly into space stood in the middle of everything. I flinched away in terror as Samantha revealed her cunning scheme. She insisted that the doll represented our love and was a macabre parody of the joy we were meant to have on our wedding day. And if we ventured to disobey her, she promised to unleash unimaginable horrors upon us. Shaken and terrified, I staggered from the room and confronted Emily about the incident. But before we could process it all, Samantha reappeared, her presence sending a chilly gust of wind through the room. With a voice full of poison, she screamed, "You can't get away from me. Your wedding day will be a day of reckoning, a day you'll never forget." That was it. She vanished into the night, leaving Emily and myself both terrified. But even though we tried everything to call off the wedding and get away from Samantha, destiny had other ideas. First, things seemed to be going well on the day of the wedding. The guests were joyful, the location was breathtakingly gorgeous, and Emily looked stunning as she made her way down the aisle. However, I felt a rush of dread come over me as we exchanged vows, like a tidal wave. Abruptly, the sky grew gloomy, and a violent storm arrived with a vengeance. Lightning blazed in angular flashes across the sky as thunder roared overhead. A sense of panic engulfed the gathering as the calm environment turned chaotic. The storm then diminished, leaving a path of devastation in its wake, almost as fast as it had started. The guests were completely disoriented, the decorations were ruined, and the venue was in disarray. The scene that met us at the altar was the worst of all. Samantha was laying there in a pool of blood, her lifeless eyes gazing up at the sky. She had obviously suffered a gruesome death, but it was still unclear how and why. Following the chaos, Emily and I attempted to reconstruct the events that had transpired. Had Samantha's menacing threats materialized, or was there a darker motive at work? One thing is certain, our wedding day will always be remembered as a terrifying and tragic day, even if we may never know the whole story. And all we can do is hope that Samantha and her perverse games are history as we go on with our lives. My view on the paranormal has always been skeptical. Stories about ghosts, demons, and haunted houses were just meant to frighten kids around a bonfire. That is, until I went through something so horrifying and puzzling that it completely rocked me. Everything began when my sister Jessica declared she was getting engaged to her long-term partner Alex. With their intense love and eagerness to begin their life together, they were the ideal pair. But as the wedding day drew nearer, odd things started to occur. It started out rather casually, something moving just out of the corner of my eye, something that gave me a brief but persistent feeling of discomfort. However, as the days passed, the occurrences became more regular and unsettling. I heard Jessica's voice reverberating through our family home's hallways one night when I woke up. With every instant that went by, the sound became more desperate and louder. At first, it was barely discernible above the whisper of the wind. When I got to Jessica's room, I could hear the windows shaking in the breeze, but it was vacant. My sister's wedding dress was hanging ominously in the closet, and it gave me the chills as I looked around the home for any trace of her. The clothing had a way of making me feel uneasy, as though it were concealing a sinister secret that was just waiting to be revealed. I made an effort to put my discomfort aside and concentrate on getting Jessica ready for her big day. However, despite my best efforts, I was unable to shake the sensation that something was gravely wrong. When the wedding day finally arrived, there was a lot of excitement in the venue. The anticipation and lovely aroma of flowers permeated the air as guests joked and interacted. However, a shadow passed over the room as Jessica put on her bridal gown, shrouding the proceedings in uncertainty. I couldn't get rid of the feeling that we were being observed as the ceremony got underway. The weight of the unknown was like a leaden cloak, weighing down on me with each step down the aisle, feeling like a march towards doom. However, Jessica's vows were when the real terror started. A chilly breeze blew through the venue as she was finishing her sentence, putting out the candles and leaving us in the dark. As we stumbled through the complete darkness, panic shot through the crowd. Then, as abruptly as it had started, the blackness disappeared. However, when we turned to look around, we saw that Jessica had vanished. We frantically patrolled the entire stadium, yelling her name into the deserted hallways. However, she was nowhere to be found and her whereabouts were unknown. She appeared to have disappeared out of thin air. The hunt for Jessica grew more intense as the hours stretched into days. Inquiring with witnesses and searching the nearby countryside for any indication of her location, police searched the region. However, despite their best attempts, they were unable to locate her. And then, just when all hope had vanished, a single clue, Jessica's wedding dress, which had been discovered abandoned in the woods outside the venue, provided a breakthrough. It seemed like it had been ripped from her body during a struggle since it was ragged and torn. The discovery we made among the creases of the cloth, however, sickened me to my core. Alone, bloody message written in Jessica's handwriting. Reading, I tried to escape, but I was able to find it. It's headed straight toward you. Jessica has never been found, and her disappearance remains a chilling mystery to this day. I can't help but wonder what evil powers are hiding behind the creases of her wedding dress, just waiting to claim their next victim, as I think back on that tragic day. My cousin Jenna was getting married to Eric, her high school love. Their wedding was the talk of the town, and they were the ideal pair. The location was an opulent hotel ballroom, beautifully furnished with sparkling lights and ornaments. It looked like something from a fairy tale. I was overjoyed to be a part of Jenna's special day as the maid of honor. I had no idea, though, that the nightmare was only getting started. The ceremony proceeded without any problems, and before long, the reception was set to start. With plans to feat the newlyweds in style, the guests gathered on the dance floor. However, as soon as the DJ began playing music, I noticed something odd. I got a shiver from the music since there was something strange about it. The melodies of the song seemed to be performed at an incorrect pace, causing distortion and warping that made my skin crawl. I dismissed it at first as a technological error, but as the evening wore on, the situation only grew worse. The pulses of the music became more frantic and louder, pounding like a heartbeat gone crazy. The DJ then started talking, just when I thought things couldn't get much stranger. His voice was a low, guttural growl that seemed to reverberate throughout the room. It was unlike anything I had ever heard. He spoke in tongues, using terms that were chilling but made no sense to me. The guests sensed something was seriously wrong, and panic broke out. We were all trapped inside the ballroom with the terrible sound as they attempted to escape, but the doors were securely closed. I got a good look at the DJ's face as the mayhem escalated, and what I saw chilled my blood to the bone. His eyes seemed to stare directly into my soul. They were as black as the night. That's when I realized we were dealing with something more than human comprehension evil that had infiltrated the DJ's spirit and mind. I looked around for an opening, desperate to get out, but the doors would not budge. We felt as though we had no way out of a nightmare. Just when it appeared that there was no hope left, a powerful and authoritative voice broke through the confusion. Jenna's husband Eric was calling, and he insisted that the DJ free us from his evil hold. For a brief instant, it appeared as though the darkness imprisoning us had been pierced by Eric's words, breaking the spell. However, the music ended as abruptly as it had started, and the DJ disappeared, leaving just an empty room and a lingering feeling of dread during his absence. We spent the next few days trying to piece together what had happened, but the memory of that night continued to haunt us like a ghost in the night. The night of the wedding from hell is one that none of us will ever forget, even though we may never discover the real nature of the DJ or the darkness that possessed him. My closest friend Amelia asked me to be her maid of honor, and that's when it all began. Amelia was getting married to Mark, the love of her life, and they both wanted the ideal wedding. We had no idea that our idyllic day would quickly become a terrible ordeal. The wedding took place in a charming home on the outskirts of the city, encircled by imposing oak trees and expansive gardens. It was the ideal location for a nuptial fantasy. Amelia contacted Emily, a well-known wedding photographer, as the big day drew near, to make sure she captured every moment of their memorable day. With a beaming smile on her face, Emily showed up on the morning of the wedding with her camera in hand. However, there was an unnerving quality to her behavior, a chilly look in her eyes that made my skin crawl. I dismissed my discomfort, attributing it to anxiety. Everything appeared to be going well as the ceremony got underway. Mark couldn't keep his eyes off Amelia as she made her way down the aisle since she looked so beautiful in her white gown. But I observed something odd as Emily took pictures of the delighted couple. There was a faint, unmistakably eerie murmur that reverberated through the air every time she snapped a photo. I made an effort to get rid of the uneasy feeling that came over me, but the day only made it worse. Emily grew more unpredictable during the reception, taking pictures with a frenetic intensity that verged on obsession. And every time I met her gaze, I sensed something sinister beneath the surface that gave me the chills. But when the sun set and the celebrations subsided, that's when the real terror started. Amelia and Mark requested Emily to snap a few last pictures to immortalize the magic of their wedding night before they left for their honeymoon. They had no idea that those pictures would show them something horrifying beyond anything they could have imagined. A loud scream broke the stillness as Emily took the last pictures, terrifying everyone. Amelia was laying on the ground, gripping her chest in pain as we hurried to the source of the sound. Mark knelt next to her, trying to console her while wearing a terrified mask on his face. I was horrified to see Amelia's health worsen right before my eyes. Her breathing became laborious and shallow, and her skin grew pale. She felt as though a force greater than herself was slowly consuming her and taking the vitality out of her body. We hurried Amelia to the hospital and phoned for an ambulance in a last-ditch effort to save her. But no matter how hard the doctors tried, they were unable to rescue her. In the dark of night, Amelia vanished, leaving her devastated family and husband in grief. We were all grieving Amelia's sudden passing, but I couldn't get rid of the idea that Emily was in some way to blame. Her presence at the wedding carried an air of foreboding, hinting at a darkness that lay just beneath the surface. Despite our best efforts, we were unable to locate any proof to support our concerns. I was overcome in the weeks that followed by an unwavering will to find the truth. I dug into Emily's past and searched the internet for any hints that would reveal who she really was, and my spine tingled as I saw what I did. As it happened, Emily wasn't who she said she was. She had a track record of deceiving her clients by enticing them into her web of lies with her charm and charisma. And like Amelia, in certain occasions her customers had also met untimely deaths under strange circumstances. Equipped with this acquired understanding, I faced Emily and insisted on receiving answers to the queries that had been bothering me ever since that terrible day. But she only smiled in my face, a malicious light shining in her eyes. She scoffed, "You think you can stop me? I am out of your grasp and comprehension, and you'll quickly realize what true fear is." She then vanished into the night, leaving me afraid and shook. However, even as I tell this story, I can't get rid of the impression that Emily's terror reign is far from ended. And I can't help but worry if we'll ever be completely safe from the evils that lurk in the shadows as I gaze into the darkness that lies beyond.